Hey people, it's Christina Salona here. Just going to bring you a quick energy update, astrology update here. So we're just days from the Pisces New Moon on March 6th. And this new moon's going to be pretty significant as it's going to bring a couple energy shifts along with it. So I'm going to give you some heads up on that. Just one day before the new moon, March 5th, which tomorrow, Mercury in Pisces retrogrades. So many people that follow astrology are familiar with Mercury retrograde. And, you know, the fact is that all planets retrograde, but Mercury retrogrades the most, okay, about 4 times a year. Now, this isn't cause for alarm and, you know, to go hiding under your covers or under a rock somewhere because Mercury's retrograde. And, you know, I see people say these kinds of things often, or, you know, want to blame everything on Mercury retrograde. But, you know, the universe is never setting us up to, you know, harm us and those kinds of things. Retrograde periods are actually a time of, you know, retracing our steps, backtracking a bit. You know, the universe gives us the opportunity to kind of catch up. So that being said, Mercury retrogrades in Pisces for basically the whole month from tomorrow until I think the 28th, okay? And Mercury doesn't really like being in Pisces. Mercury rules over communication and information and our intellect, okay? It's like how we process information and things. And in Pisces, things are not so clear, you know, so information may not be clear. Your perceptions are kind of clouded. So it's not the time to, you know, do your accounting and bookkeeping. You know, if you got to keep facts straight, that's not the time for that. But it can be a time, you know, to be daydreamy and imaginative and all that kind of stuff. Really good for creative pursuits. But during this time, there's like this going back over old memories, old conversations, old stories is what I see coming up, you know, and kind of replaying those in our imaginations and in our minds and things like that, you know, whatever that means to you. There's a lot of this kind of stuff coming up. And this has been a process over the last few years, and I've talked a lot about it. Only recently did I start doing videos. But, you know, there's a process of this letting go of these old stories, you know, and bringing on the new and becoming. Okay, so this is just part of it. All right. And some of the same old Mercury rules of thumb can apply. We don't want to buy electronics or appliances or vehicles while Mercury is retrograde. Anything with moving parts, you know. You don't want to sign documents, you know, that can obligate you for a long time, especially with Mercury retrograde in Pisces, because again, you know, you don't have all the information or it's not quite clear. All right. Now, that being said, of course, if your vehicle breaks down and you need a new one, or an appliance breaks down and you need a new one, then by all means, go and get it, because that's what the universe has in store for you. Okay, but if you're just kind of like, oh, I really want to buy a nice, shiny new car, this isn't the time to do it. All right, it's just as simple as that. I've seen it happen many, many times where someone, you know, oh, I got a new car and this and that, and I see them posting stuff, and I think to myself, it's Mercury retrograde, and, you know, they shouldn't be buying a car now, but this is none of my business. And then I'll see, you know, a year or 2 years later, complaining about the car the whole time. You know, it was like it was never a good car, it was never reliable, or they just didn't like it, or whatever. You know, this is just, you know, how it goes. So anyway, you don't want to purchase those things during this time. Some other things that are happening at this Pisces new moon is that Neptune, which is the ruler of Pisces, is really closely conjunct this new moon. Did I say full moon? It's a new moon. I'm not sure if I just said full, but it's a new moon. See that unclear communication? So anyway, yes, so Neptune closely conjunct this new moon, really clouding perceptions, really heightening sensitivity, okay? Pisces is already a sensitive sign, and Neptune is the ruler of Pisces. So these certain sensitivities will be very high, very emotional time at the new moon here. And then this just coincides with Mercury retrograde through there too. So, you know, you may be super sensitive while you're reviewing and reflecting on the past and these past stories or events or whatever, you know, your imagination and psyche tends to drum up. Also, you know, when I say heightened sensitivity, this isn't just emotions. This can be, you know, our psychic antennas can be really fine-tuned at a Pisces new moon and conjunct Neptune, okay? So keep that in mind. You know, you might have these intuitive flashes and perceptions, you know, where thoughts and words and images kind of all like blend together. Okay, you know, which is kind of how things work on those psychic realms. It's a water sign, okay, Pisces is, and being that Neptune's so close, you know, this brings water very prominent, okay, into the picture here, whether this has to do with oceans and tides, marine life, flooding, leaks, the quality or availability of water and drinking water, those kinds of things come into play at this time. So just keep that in mind. Now, one of the other really major energetic shifts that this moon brings in is also that Uranus enters Taurus, okay? For the first time, you know, it hasn't really seen these parts since like 1942. So from, you know, say like 1935 to 1942, Uranus was in Taurus. And we got a little taste of it in 2018 from May through November of 2018. And then Uranus retrograded back into Aries, okay? But now Uranus enters Taurus and will remain there for the next 7 years. So I think that brings us to like 2026. So this is a long influence, okay? And these things are generational. They really do shape generations and periods of time. Because that's what astrology is. It's about cycles, within cycles, within cycles, within cycles. And astrology is a language of energy. Okay, and there's many things that can happen, you know, during this 7 years. So I just want to talk about some of the possibilities, some of the possible manifestations with Uranus and Taurus. And I talked a lot about it in the end of 2017 as I went over, you know, the coming year of 2018. And we talked a lot about it in May of 2018 too, for anybody that you know, reads my blogs or attended any of my workshops or whatever. You know, this is a big deal. It's like I said, it's not every day that this planet shifts gears, you know, and changes sign. So let's just talk about the pure essence of these energies. They're very different, where Uranus is very unpredictable and unsettled, and Taurus is actually very predictable and likes to kind of plod along with some kind of regularity. So these are two very different energies that are coming together. That being said, you know, I've said it for, you know, the last several months, and Taurus likes comfort and ease, and with Uranus in this position here, This really gets us out of our comfort zones, which can be a good thing. What they say is life happens outside of your comfort zones, and Taurus can kind of get a little too complacent. So if there's, any comfortably carved ruts, you've, dug into over the past few years, this kind of influence really kind of shakes you out of that, and it might be unsettling at first. One of the things I always like to say is, especially with these longer influences, is that they kind of kick you on the way in, like where it's so noticeable, and kick you on the way out, because after a few years you kind of get used to the energy, so then as it's making its exit, it kind of hits you again, with a bit of a jolt. So some of the other things is Taurus rules over values and money, and so this makes finances unstable or brings changes to finances. Now when I say change, of course we're humans and we're creatures of habit. Change isn't necessarily a bad thing, so just keep that in mind. There could also be changes in costs, unexpected expenses, plenty of market fluctuations and things like that. And we did see that all last year as anybody that follows, stocks and the markets and things like that, we'd see, this climbing, boop, crash, So that kind of fluctuation and instability will really, kind of mark these next 7 years. Changes within the real estate markets. Now let's talk about changes in currency. That could happen. There's electronic currencies. There's talk in some circles about ending the Federal Reserve and things like that. So, everything's on the table in that way. Some of the other things Taurus rules over. Taurus is an earth sign, okay? So Mother Gaia is ruled over by Taurus, okay? And so we can see changes, geological changes. Now last year, just as Uranus was in the last degree of Aries, ready to make its move into Taurus, Hawaii had the volcano erupting and rumbling, and it was no end in sight to it. And then during that short period of time, there were several volcanoes that erupted at that time. In fact, the news didn't really cover a lot of it. We had a volcano erupt in Japan, in, I think, Ecuador. There were several of them that, didn't really get any press, but nonetheless they were happening. So geological changes, rumblings, anomalies, okay? Uranus rules things that are odd and unusual. So these unusual, unprecedented kind of geological things or weather anomalies or whatever could take place at this time. Uranus also rules over the skies and flight and celestial mechanics and air travel and space travel. So these things could come to light at this time too. Also, geoengineering and things like that, as, there's things in the sky. It's not a conspiracy if it's true. So there's that, causing different, geological changes and anomalies and things. There could be changes in costs to air travel, changes in costs to technology, or security with technology could become a major focus during this time. Remember, like I said, this is a 7-year transit, so there are many different manifestations, and I'm just trying to throw out a few. Taurus also rules over our physical senses. So with Uranus there, and I remember saying this last year because I experienced this myself, there could be like kind of like an electrifying or an awakening of your senses where, how I described it, it was like suddenly it was like life in technicolor, where blues looked even bluer, and the colors were more vivid and vibrant, or food tasted different or better, things smelled, more pungent or powerful, those kinds of things. Taurus also rules over the throat and the voice and the throat chakra. So you could experience changes within those things. Maybe your voice changes. Maybe you suddenly start singing or discover that you can sing or that you can't or whatever. The throat chakra. Maybe you're able to finally speak your truth. That's been a thing for many, many people in the past few years. The thyroid. Maybe there's changes in the thyroid with this new transit. And of course, also weight gain. Fluctuations in weight could also take place during this time. All right. So these are just some of the things that I'm throwing out there. As I said, it's a longer influence. There's several different manifestations that happen over 7 years. And of course, it's always helpful if you know your own chart to see where these transits are taking place, which house is this taking place within your own chart, which transits is it making for you personally, all that astrology can help with. As I said, astrology is a language of energy, so it's I liken it to the weather, right? You're going to watch the weather every day. You want to know, do you bring a coat? Do you bring an umbrella? Are you wearing shorts and flip-flops? Astrology works in a very similar fashion, so it's always good to keep that in mind. It's always good to know ahead of time, right? Timing in life is everything. So that being said, like I said, the Pisces New Moon kind of brings in this energy. One of the good things is that Saturn favorably aspects this new moon, so it does bring a bit of a grounding influence amid these really changing and fluctuating times. So that's all I have for you for now. I hope you are well and that the stars always shine upon you. And look, this is my new YouTube channel. Go and subscribe, do all the good social media stuff, like, share, subscribe, share. I would appreciate the help and support. And also, if you are not subscribed to my blog, Tales of Lunacy, you can find it on my website, which is laurelhillshealingarts.com. You can subscribe for that, and it's free. You'll receive my blog, my lunar forecast pretty much twice a month, right in your inbox. So that's all I have for you for now. Have a great week.